Hello, BookTube. I'm Peg, the Book Prize addict. Speaking of book prizes, I've just been watching some great booktubers talk about the two big book prizes that are going to be, the finalists are going to be announced this week. The NBA National Book Awards, that's, you could say, the U.S.'s top awards, and the Booker on Wednesday and Thursday. And I've been listening to all the people, prognosticating on what they think will win. The sad truth is, I haven't read the book list this year, the book list of them. So I've got a lot of catching up to do. In fact, that's going to be my project till the end of the year. I've seen a lot of people having big projects of all the books they're going to read before the end of the year that they didn't get to read or want to read, or whatever. And I've decided I've been very lax on my BookTube videos and my reading, and I usually follow 25 to 30 different book prizes each year and report on them. And this year, actually, all I did was collect the books. I haven't read them, many of them, or talked about them. So my project is, I have a big list of all of them. I'm going to try every week to read a certain amount and report on them. So I've got my first ones today, part one of that. But first of all, I wanted to mention my gaudy necklace. This is actually rubber. I did not make it. I do make some of mine, but I bought it from the designer that did make it, and it's actually all made of rubber, and it just kind of bounces when you walk. She did warn me that if I take it on an airplane trip, I should take it into the cabin with me, because if it gets underneath and gets real hot, it could all melt. Wouldn't that be awful? Ugh. Anyway, so it's kind of fun. I don't think I'll ever take an airplane trip again, though, so don't have to worry about that. Okay, let's get to the books. I'm going to start with some ones that I haven't actually even talked about before. The first one I'm going to talk about is the Jcb Prize, which is a prize given in India to the best, I guess, novel there. They do have several prizes now. I'm not sure if it's the biggest. Actually, I think I saw money-wise it is the biggest. And they're in English. In this case, the one that won was the only one that was translated from an Indian language into English, and it's called Mustache. I'll let you read there the translator's name and what the it is about a certain based on a true story about a certain man that lived in a section of India, and I liked it real well. You can't tell here, but it has the section they live in, and the thing is, it's farmland, but it's under sea level and it floods a lot, which brings up, as I just made a video about all the books that seem to talk about water, and water having kind of a mythical effect on the atmosphere of books. And this is certainly one that does, because sometimes they have to go in boats to their fields to get their crops. And this did help a lot. Okay, the main story is that it's also about caste, of course. A lower caste man gets to be has a part in a play. It's a part in a play, and he is able to grow a mustache, and that's evidently something only higher caste can do. And after it's over, he doesn't want to give up his mustache. I didn't quite read all of this. I got a very good feel for it. It takes a lot of energy and time to get used to all the different place names and everything. And when I read that, I want to do it more slowly, but I certainly got a very good impression of it, and it did take you very much into the watery landscape, the muddy fields, the boats, the people. It was very good, so I would recommend that. Okay, the next prize I'm going to talk about is the Portico Prize, which I believe is fairly new. It's based in Manchester, and it's UK Prize, obviously. And it's based on, I believe, I don't know what the rules are, but novels from Northern England. I don't know if the person has to live in Northern England, or if it has to be about Northern England, or what the deal is exactly. I noticed that our booktuber Simon Savage was one of the judges on it, so he probably has quite a bit to say on it. And the winner of this was Saltwater. Again, had a watery theme. In this case, a young woman tells the stories in short chapters, almost vignettes, you might say. And it's one that doesn't have a plot, really. I mean, she tells you different things about different parts of her life as she goes along, but it's not a straightforward linear plot. But it's very well written, and the parts are very lyrical, and you get a very good feeling for different things that have happened in her life. I read it kind of quickly. I would like to read it again. This kind of book I feel like I really need to read slowly. You could almost read one chapter a day of these short chapters and really think about it and look at her language and everything. But this was very good. I do believe this is a debut novel. I'm not sure if they all are or not, but I think she has a future ahead of her. Okay, we are now getting to the Goldsmiths Prize, which was just awarded this week. It's been around, I don't think, 6 or 7 years. Again, another UK prize. It has to do with novels that we loosely term experimental. They do things differently. And you know, I used to love those. They were kind of like a puzzle to figure out what was experimental about it. I don't know if I'm getting too old or what, or my reading just wasn't very concentrated this year. Kind of had a hard time getting through them, but I did attempt some of them, and I read a lot about. There's a great discussion on Goodreads about the different ones, and I read a lot about that. So I'm going to go through 4 of them, the 4 kind of top ones, and end up with the one I like best, which did win, and quickly go through those. Incidentally, I'm giving all the links at the bottom if you want to find out more about the prizes or the books or whatever. You can click on there. Okay, the first one is called Bina, and she makes a very good point about it. It's not Bina, it's Bina. And it was, I guess you would say, experimental. It starts out with a bunch of postcards that this woman, or not, envelopes, used envelopes, that this woman is writing on the back of, and they're sort of like warnings. And to start it, you're not really sure what happens. It's well written. I didn't finish it, quite truthfully, but I did read in one of the discussions that actually it's the sequel to the one before this she wrote called Malarkey, which is about the same woman and introduces the woman, and you would have a lot more idea about the woman when you start this, because it's very hard to figure out as you start it. So if you do try that, I think I would read Malarkey first. Okay, next we have a very unusual one called The Mermaid of Black Conch, again, about the water, and this does involve an actual mermaid that a fisherman finds when he's out one day in the town. It's an actual mermaid, and she's not real cultivated yet, but they do get her and try to cultivate her, and it's quite mythical in its story. It is a story that's enjoyable, and the writing's good, but really it's not too experimental, except for, there being a real mermaid in it. But it was good. It was a good story. Okay. Next we have my next to the favorite, and that was called Mr. Beethoven by Paul Griffiths. Paul Griffiths not only is a great writer, he's a professional musician and writes music and teaches music and is really knowledgeable about classical music, which has to do with the story of Beethoven, the famous composer. He sort of makes up the story. As most people know, Beethoven was deaf at the end of his life. Even when he composed his last symphonies, he was already deaf. He just knew by looking at the notes what it would sound like. And this is the imaginary story of, he didn't die when he did die, but he came over to America he was commissioned to write an oratorio or a work of music. And it told the story about him coming there and getting used to the U.S. people. This is the late 1800s. Not only did he not speak English, he spoke German, but he couldn't hear anyway. And it was really quite interesting how he got to know the people. They found a, interpreter for him, young woman who he became actually quite good friends with, and she played a big part of the story. She was kind of the interpolator of all that was said to him. Sometimes she wasn't sure if they needed to be said. I was just looking. Oh, this is a Republic of Consciousness Book of the Month also, which is another, it's a prize for small presses, but they often are experimental too. So that is going to be coming up right after the first year. So who knows, it might be in that. Okay, so the thing about it that was good once you figured it out, it was it's spelled Oulipo, Oulipo novel, in that where they give you a restriction that you have to work with. And sometimes you're not sure there was a book written without any E's in it. Some people didn't even know till they finished it. But this one, you don't really know. I mean, it's an interesting story of his time there in Boston. And, well, I'll tell you what it is. I won't ruin it for you. It's because he is a professional musician, everything that happens in the music is something that he could have written. I don't know if it's taken from it. It has the music, the oratorio part, and Paul Griffiths puts at the end a lot of notes about what this book has to do with the actual Beethoven. I'm sure somebody that was into classical music would get a lot more out of this. But I did enjoy the part where he's getting along with the people in Boston, and they think he's never going to finish the piece he's supposed to be writing. Okay, so the winner of this was, and my favorite, The Sunken Land Begins to Rise Again by, I think it's Mike John Harrison. He goes by M. John Harrison. I've read some of him, and I guess he's turned maybe a science fiction writer. I wouldn't call him as much science fiction as speculative. I think that's an easier word to describe. He wrote a trilogy called the Light Trilogy that I read, and I just really got into it. It had this uncanny feel of the world, and strange things happen, and he's so good with atmosphere. And this is the same way. This has a story about a man in his 50s that kind of loose ends, lives in a room in a crummy boarding house, and is kind of at a bad part of his life, and gets sucked into this deal, I guess, or this job with this man he meets. It's just weird. It's uncanny. It's weird. But the main thing is, it's another one about water. The man has an office, and maybe, well, I don't know if he lives on a houseboat. So our character, Shaw, is always going to the houseboat to work. And strange things happen there, especially one time when he goes at night. So again, as I said before, there seems to be a lot of book about the powers of water and things happening differently when they're around water lately. So this one I really liked. Okay, before I go, I just want to quickly update. How do I do that? Let's see. Let's get here. Where are my pictures? I told you before that I was making, how do I find this? Here it is, okay. I was making a shawl or almost a sweater for a friend of mine whose house burned down in the western states in the wildfire, and she lost everything, and her friends are trying to get together and get things that she, not money wise, but that maybe she lost. You know, one of the things is pictures of her house. I mean, they left in such a hurry, they have nothing. But I decided, I had knitted her a shawl once, almost 10 years ago when I went to visit her, and she looked wonderful in it. She seemed to really appreciate it. It's a red shawl, and I'll just show you a few pictures of it. This is on her back deck on her beautiful home in the mountains that burned down, and you can see in the front it's almost like a sweater. You can also wear it wrapped around. It's almost 6 feet long, was almost 6 feet long, and you can see there a bit of her home and the wonderful trees in the mountains in the back. And I have this developed into an actual picture that I can give her with it when I finish the shawl. I'm going to make for her a replacement. It won't be exactly like this, but pretty much. So hoping to get done by Christmas, and I thought I'd show my work. This is the very start of it, and it starts in a small, it gets bigger and bigger and bigger and goes 6 feet long. So I've put down, it's 15 inches now. So I'll show you as I go along working this shawl. It's really fun to work on. So it's not a job at all for me. I love knitting. Then I found some more knitters on BookTube that are booktubers. Hannah, I just figured out is a knitter and such a great booktuber. So I want to watch more of hers. So that's it for now. Have a good reading week. I'll be back with more book prize reviews of 2020 next week. Bye.